Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of our 3-star Rift Clear series. Today was supposed to be the last day that we were looking at the rifts in the Lambda difficulty, and for the most part we are finished with the rifts at this difficulty level. But there are a couple adjustments we need to make to that format, which we'll go into a little more detail here in just a moment. Now, before we continue, check to see if you are subscribed to the channel, as the subscription is free and easy and we bring content to you on a daily basis. And feel free to drop a like on this video if you feel that it was helpful. So without further ado, let's jump into these rifts. Now the first rift that we'll be having a look at is the level 45 solo rift themed around Magneto, titled Magnetic Melee. And this rift is pretty straightforward and can be accomplished quite succinctly. The two things that you need to keep in mind when looking to clear this, and it's best to try and focus on this in independent runs, is first trying to defeat all enemies, so prioritizing one run where you take out every single enemy that appears, including those that are in the final mini-boss fight, as well as finishing this rift in a 4-minute time segment. Now I think that the 4-minute one is a little bit more trying, so that's the one that we're going to showcase and analyze here. So you do start off this fight in the secluded hallway from the Temple of the Hand. And if you're not going for the run where you're trying to take on all of the enemies in the fight, you can very easily get through this sequence just by kind of maneuvering your way around the enemies that show up here. Now, really the only thing that we're looking to accomplish with this particular run is meeting that time frame criteria, and it can be a little bit daunting in this final fight, but ultimately it does help get us to the point where we can make the most of the time that we are allotted for this difficulty. Now, in the first segment of this fight, Bullseye is going to run around this room, and one of the better strategies that you can employ is hiding as often as you can behind these storage containers, especially when he's throwing out his rapid-fire projectile attacks, as they do tend to eat away at your health quite significantly. You can also roll around them to dodge, but this first portion of the fight is relatively short, and you will most likely be able to clear that out by attacking him before you are able to take care of it by staggering him out. Now, I do waste a little bit of time here breaking down this display case because I was hoping to get some extra health for the next stage of this battle, and fortunately that is exactly what happened. Now, as we transition into stage 2 of this fight, things get a little bit more hectic with the appearance of some additional enemies that we need to take on, but ultimately we are focusing on Bullseye as he goes around the different portions of the fight. And I do tend to roll around his different attacks as frequently as I can, and you may want to take a moment to burn down the enemies that show up here, but honestly, they're not as big as a hassle as some of the other enemies that show up in this level of difficulty. So at this point, we have him completely finished out through his stagger bar, so we resort over to a ability attack, particularly those rock projectiles that he has, or I guess rock and metal projectiles, to get through the majority of his health. And where we're close enough here, I do resort back to that attack to burn through what's remaining of his health and get through this fight to get us that last and 3rd star. Now, rift number 2 that we're looking at is the level 47 solo rift for Falcon, which is Falcons Fury. This one is a little bit more precise, as the 2 different stars that you are looking to obtain from this rift are centered around clearing out the trial in a certain time frame. And if you really want to make sure that you have the opportunity to clear that out, I personally recommend getting Falco up to level 40 at the very least, so his synergy attacks deal more damage and are more efficient as you upgrade them. So we're going to show you the run where we get through this fight in 2 minutes and 20 seconds or less. Now, Falco's fight takes place in Avengers Tower against a bunch of Ultron drones, and you can see on the right side of your screen that the amount of characters that we are looking to defeat in this run is 23. And I do resort to finishing off a couple of these enemies with either the dash attacks or his secondary ability, which allows him to spin around with his wings. And you do want to keep as many of those MP replenishing orbs on standby as possible as extra reserves for your abilities as the fight goes on, as you do tend to deplete them pretty rapidly as the fight progresses. Now, most of the enemies that show up are just the standard grunts, but you do have a couple of these mighty enemies that show up, and so I cycle around two of his attacks primarily, which is the uppercut and then that Red Wing ground slam attack. Particularly because we can improve the efficiency of his attacks as we cycle between the attacks that prioritize large areas of effect. At this stage, we're about halfway through, and we're doing pretty well on our MP, but we do want to conserve that where possible and rack up some more energy for our ability attacks whenever we possibly can. At this stage, I do prioritize a couple of my attacks around these two mighty enemies that were bunched up, but they can be a little bit difficult to work with as they don't like to stay bunched up for an extended period of time. Now at this point, we've just about got everything finished out, and as we zip around, we have only a few enemies left here, and we can take them out pretty easily by utilizing the attack that shoots the feathers off of Falcon's glider and bursts down the remaining of those enemies there. And that gets us through this fight without using the extreme attack and giving us the 3-star clear. The third rift that we'll be looking at today is the level 48 solo rift featuring Deadpool, and this is titled Unstoppable. I do kind of like this rift because it references a moment earlier in the story quest where Deadpool is trying to take down Juggernaut. And that's exactly what you have to do in this fight, is you've got to take him out. And the criteria you're looking for here is finishing in 2 minutes or less, which can very easily be accomplished with a series of succinct attacks. The more difficult of the two to attain is the 3rd star, which is taking 10,000 damage or less during the course of this fight. So I'm going to show you the strategy to get the latter of these two requirements. Now, Juggernaut hits very hard, and that's something that you definitely need to keep in mind with this fight. Not only does he hit hard, but a lot of his attacks take up a large area of effect, and you'll want to run away from them as much as you possibly can. Fortunately, there are a couple of ways that you can boost your attack damage output without needing to use your abilities, and one of those is by utilizing the energy canisters that are scattered around the room. This is one of the more difficult things to keep in mind with the fight against Juggernaut, is he does have a couple of segments where he will dash around the room and ricochet off of the walls, and that is particularly troublesome, especially because of the sometimes unpredictable trajectory that you find yourself using. Now, there are two attacks that I find are highly effective in this fight against Juggernaut, and one of those is the Slice and Dice, where Deadpool will teleport around the arena. The other is the Katanarama, where he will spin forward wielding his katanas both at the same time and slashing in a circular pattern as he dashes forwards. But you really want to dash away from Juggernaut's attacks anytime that you see them inbound, as he just hits really hard, and you take 1 or 2 solid hits from him and you're already beyond your damage cap threshold. So either getting really good at your dashing parry attacks or taking yourself off the ground with Deadpool's double jump, as he does teleport and remain intangible for a short period during the course of the use of that attack. We're just about finished with Juggernaut at this point, though he is going to transition over one more time into his Ricochet style attack. And at this point, I'm just looking to finish the fight as quickly as we can. So we switch over to using the Pew Pew, and yes, that is the name of that attack, in order to get the remainder of Juggernaut's health down and get that final star for this Rift clear condition. Now, the final two rifts I have listed here simultaneously, and there is a good reason for that. The first one that you're seeing up towards the top right-hand corner of your screen is the final solo-style rift, which is Star-Lord's attempt in taking down Thanos. And this has to be hands down one of the worst solo objectives that you can possibly have. Because Star-Lord has abysmal damage output with his standard attacks, and his abilities don't offer a whole lot of increase to that attack that's going on. And you have to take down Thanos, one of the toughest bosses in the game, all on your own. And the criteria for that is getting 300,000 plus damage from just using your abilities alone. And the second criteria is finishing in 1 minute and 30 seconds or less, which is quite difficult to do because Star-Lord, again, doesn't have phenomenal damage output. So honestly, one of the things that you want to focus on when taking or attempting the Star-Lord fight is you want him up at as high a level as you can get him to assure that you can actually output the damage that's required by the fight, as it's bad. It's really bad. So honestly, I didn't get the 3-star clears here on this particular difficulty, and it'll take me some time before I actually can, but I will be sure to revisit this once we've been able to. In all honesty, I think I'm going to have to grind out levels on Star-Lord in order to get him up to at least hero level 200 before I even feel remotely confident in trying to take on that challenge with him again. The second fight that we have going on the other hand, is the level 65 ultimate fight featuring members of the Black Order. And in this style of the fight, you have to take on all of the Black Order fights sequentially and simultaneously, as you will have 3 active bosses present at any given time during the fight, which includes the final confrontation with Thanos, similar, if not identical, to what you see going on with the Star-Lord synergy attack fight there. Now, honestly, it's not super difficult to get through this fight as long as you have your team at a decent level. You can get through with 2 or fewer teammate incapacitations, which is the target and the expectation. All of the members of my team that I currently have active in this particular difficulty are down at they're at hero level 80 at the very least, and they all have very unique benefits that they bring to the sequence of that fight. Now, right off the bat, there will be the characters of Supergiant, Ebony Maw, and Corvus Glaive running around, and you will want to take them out as best you can. Ebony is by far the weakest of the members of the Black Order, and as soon as you defeat one of those characters, you will then be confronted by Supergiant, and then as you take out another opponent, you will then be greeted by Colobsidian, and once Colobsidian has been defeated, you will then be met by Thanos, and they don't let up or relent with their attacks at all as that progresses. So a couple of things you do want to keep in mind is you want to, with your abilities, you want to fill out your skill tree so you can regain health more efficiently, either passively or by using your extreme attacks, because honestly, you're going to need it in this fight because it is very hectic and non-stop chaos. Now, as you continue to progress through the members of the Black Order, the fight does tend to get easier once you finally eliminate the characters down to the final remaining few. And at this stage, my main priority is focusing on Colobsidian because A, he hits the hardest, and B, he takes up a lot of the space in this arena and can really make the fight a lot more of a nuisance than it really has to be. He has large area of effect attacks and kind of slashes all across the battlefield. So as soon as I get him staggered out, I honestly just want to get as much damage in on him as physically possible. And the best way to do that for me was burning through all of the extreme attacks available at my disposal. So we've got that fight down to just Colobsidian and Thanos at this point. and we're cutting it close on that time, and the time frame is the other thing that makes this fight a little bit sensitive. Now, I was unable to get the 3-star clear in this as of currently because I think my team is a little bit under-leveled to meet the 5-minute time frame that's required by that fight. But as soon as I get my team up to a slightly higher level, I should have no difficulties whatsoever in getting that final star for this fight. Now, we've so far gotten through it without a single teammate incapacitation, and now that we're down to just Thanos, there's a very high likelihood that we will be able to get through with relative ease, and that is certainly a good sign to see. Now, Thanos, he does have his attacks that are amped up with the Infinity Stones, so you are fighting an Infinity-infused version of Thanos. But honestly, as soon as you get the rhythm of his attacks down, he's pretty easy to cope with and deal consistent amounts of damage to. Now, one of the least favorite attacks that Thanos has at his disposal, honestly, are those yellow tracking orbs that he sends out from the Mind Stone power buff. But we can easily get around those as they do home, but they're pretty finite in terms of their overall capacity. Now, we do want to be a little cautious as he uses some of these more advanced attacks, but we are almost to the point where we've got him burned down, and with just a couple more well-placed team synergy attacks, we should be able to get him down to the last couple of slivers of his health. And in the interest of getting the remainder of the fight finished out, I do go ahead and launch off my extreme attacks one final time as soon as I have them at my disposal. Yeah, you're sacrificing a little bit of your damage output by doing it that way, but when he's that close to death, you might as well get the damage in wherever you can. So that gets us the secondary star, and like I said, we will be back to revisit this rift and get that third and final star once the team is at a slightly higher level. So I wish I had some better news and could show you that we have all of the stars completed for this difficulty. Alas, the Star-Lord fight is infuriatingly difficult, and so we will need to revisit that with a much higher level Star-Lord. And with a slightly higher level team, we'll be able to get that final star from the Thanos fight and the rest of the members of the Black Order in that final trial for this Rift difficulty. But don't you worry, I have plans on doing so and showcasing what the best strategies are at that time frame. So though we don't quite have our goal met, we will at some point in the future. In fact, one of the things that I plan on doing with this game is I plan on doing a couple of casual streams on Twitch to help level up the members of the team and make them more efficient and more powerful and capable of taking on these rifts and these difficulties, as well as welcoming any of you to come along and join, as well as just kind of having a casual interaction, as streaming is something that I am optimistic and looking forward to getting more and more into as my schedule frees up a little bit here heading into the summer months. So thanks again for watching. I hope that this has proved helpful for you. If you have any comments or criticism, please feel free to leave them down in the comments, as I do review them pretty regularly. If this video was helpful to you, please feel free to leave a like. And once again, subscribe if you haven't already. We're coming up on 110 subscribers, and we should have our 125 current subscriber goal by the time our channel hits the first anniversary, which would just be absolutely awesome. So once more, thank you so much for your time, and you have a fantastic rest of your day.